Welcome to RAAONLINE. I am Dr. Rajapriya, Professor and HOD of Anatomy. Today's session will be vertebral column. Objectives of this session is, at the end of the session, you must be able to describe the curvatures of vertebral column, describe the type, articular ends, ligaments and movements of intervertebral joints, sacroiliac joint and pubic symphysis. You have to describe lumbar puncture and we have to explain anatomical basis of scoliosis, lordosis, prolapsed disc, spondylolisthesis and spina bifida. And we are going to deal today's session under following headings: Introduction to vertebral column and functions, joints of vertebral column, movements of vertebral column, curvatures, vasculature and nerve supply, and few clinical aspects which includes congenital anomalies, abnormal curvatures, rupture of ligaments, fractures and dislocations of vertebra, injury and diseases of zyghypophyseal joint, pathology of intervertebral discs. Coming to the vertebral column, it is a long column. It is otherwise called as backbone or spine. It is made up of 7 cervical vertebral vertebrae, 12 thoracic vertebrae, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral and 4 coccygeal vertebrae. It extends from cranium to apex of coccyx. In adults, it measures about 72 to 75 centimeters long and 1/4 of it will be filled with intervertebral discs. Most of the weight is anterior to the column and surely it is supported on the posterior aspect by powerful muscles attached to strong levers, that is the spinous process. These are the spinous process and the transverse process of the vertebra. This is a vertebral column and this is a cervical vertebra. 7 cervical vertebra, 12 thoracic vertebra, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral and 4 coccygeal vertebrae in the vertebral column. And this is the posterior view and this is the left lateral view of the vertebral column. You can see a curvature here which is called a cervical curvature and this curvature is called as a lumbar curvature. The curvature which is present here is called as thoracic curvature and the curvature which is present here is called as sacral curvature. And this is the anterior aspect and this is the posterior aspect for this bone and this is the superior aspect and this is the inferior aspect. What are the functions of vertebral column? Why do we require it? It protects our spinal cord and nerves. It supports the weight of the body above pelvis and then transmits weight to lower limbs. Partly rigid and partly flexible axis for the body. It provides extended base on which head is placed and pivots, rotates, and it plays an important role in posture and locomotion. And what are the joints? There are joints between vertebral bodies, joints between vertebral arches, craniovertebral joints, costovertebral joints and sacroiliac joints in pelvis. And the joints between the vertebral bodies are uncovertebral joints and the intervertebral joints. The joints of the vertebral arch are between the superior articular process and the inferior articular process. This part that is called a zygohypophyseal joint. And craniovertebral joints are atlanto-occipital joints and atlanto-axial joints. Sacroiliac joint is that joint where the sacrum articulates with ilium on either sides. Coming to joints of vertebral bodies, they are symphysis type, that is secondary cartilaginous joints. Intervertebral disc, it is nothing but the intervertebral disc. Uncovertebral joints of Luschka extend from C3 or C4 to C6 vertebra or C7 vertebra. These uncovertebral joints of Luschka are nothing but the joints between the upper aspects of corners, edges of the bodies of vertebra, articulate with the bodies of vertebra of the either the vertebra above and the vertebra below. They are called as uncovertebral joints of Luschka, which is present only from C3 to C6 or C4 to C7. And there is some anterior longitudinal ligament which is present on the anterior aspect and only ligament that limits extension of the vertebral column. Posterior longitudinal ligament prevents intervertebral disc herniation and weakly resists hyperflexion. Coming to the ligaments of vertebral column, see this is the anterior view of the vertebral column, anterior view of the vertebral column, and all these are the vertebral bodies, and you can see the superior articular processes and the inferior articular process. Coming to the intervertebral ligaments, these are the ligamentum flava between the lamina of the adjacent vertebra and the posterior longitudinal ligament along the dorsal aspect of the bodies of vertebra, interspinous ligament between the spinous process of two vertebra, supraspinous ligament over the superior aspect of the spinous process, and anterior longitudinal ligament in front of the body of the vertebral column. These are the ligaments of vertebral column. Okay. Coming to the intervertebral disc. Intervertebral disc is present between the bodies of two vertebra. It has peripheral annulus fibrosus, central nucleus pulposus. It is made up of central nucleus pulposus and peripheral annulus fibrosus in the intervertebral disc. This view is a lateral view and the sectional view, and these are the joints of vertebral column and these are the ligaments of vertebral column. I will repeat, they are ligamenta flava, posterior longitudinal ligament, anterior longitudinal ligament, interspinous ligament and supraspinous ligament. Coming to joints of vertebral arches, they are called as, see this is the inferior articular process of the bone above and this is the superior articular process of the bone below. The inferior articular process of the bone below and the superior articular process of the bone above will fuse together to form the joints of vertebral arches, which are otherwise called as facet joints or zygoapophyseal joint. What type of joint it is? It is nothing but a plain synovial joint. The ligaments which helps in these joints of vertebral arches are ligamentum flava, interspinous ligaments, supraspinous ligaments, ligamentum nuchae and intertransverse ligaments. Okay, and these vertebral arches, joints of vertebral arches helps in forward flexion and backward extension of the vertebral column.